Hello, my name is Chloe. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you my June wrap up. So this feels completely mental. I cannot believe June is already over. Even when I went to say the intro, I went to say May. I lost on time. Time does still not exist. I had a pretty poor reading month in terms of enjoyment this month. It's been not upsetting, but just a little bit disappointing because I know that July and August, I'm not going to be reading as much because I've kicked off with my college again to become a chartered accountant. So I have a lot of studying to do, and that is probably going to negatively impact my reading. But yeah, we shall see. I just wish I would have had a better month going into a few months of no reading, but just gets me more excited for September when I'm done again with exams. So in the month, I did actually read 25 books, but my average rating was a 2.8 star. So that's made up of 1 5-star book, 1 4.5-star book, 4 4-stars, 2 3.5 stars, 1 3-star, 5 2.5 stars, 8 2-stars, 1 1-star, and 2 books I didn't rate at all. And I read 7,716 pages in the month. I did say my May wrap up was the first one that I recorded the page numbers. So in that month, I'm now trying to quickly find my notes when I know I could just find it slowly and then edit it out. But you know, we're going with it. Okay, so in May, I did read over 10,000 pages. I read 10,333 pages across 28 books. So it would be very simple for me to do the maths here, but I just haven't done it. So even though I only read 3 less books, I read just over 2,000 less pages. So the books I was reading were smaller, and yeah, a lot of 2-star reviews. So one more stat that I decided to take this month, as I had a few comments about listening to more audiobooks. I did listen to a lot of audiobooks this month. That was kind of my main time that I was able to read, was while working. I would put my audiobook on, and yeah, it gave me a chance to read when I wouldn't normally do like before. So I read 16 normal books, and by that I mean print books or ebooks written in full prose, is that the word? I listened to 7 audiobooks and I read 2 poetry collections. So, okay, I may have to look down at my notes a fair bit, and there's probably going to be a few that I remember nothing about, but that will just make my wrap up shorter. The first book I listened to on audio was Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. So I wanted to give this a go because I read There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins, and it was okay, but it wasn't amazing. So I was wondering whether her contemporary work was even better, and sadly it wasn't. I gave this book 2.5 stars. I was going to say that I can't tell you the name of the main character. I'm assuming it was Anna. The audiobook was done really well, and it felt like something that if I would have discovered it at 13 years old, it could have been the best thing since sliced bread. But because I've read a lot more YA contemporary, it just didn't really do anything for me, and it wasn't awful, but I didn't have the best time with it. Then I read Landline by Rainbow Rowell, which I gave 2 stars. This book did not impress me in any way. I have a very mixed relationship with Rainbow Rowell books. So Attachments I gave 5 stars, and Eleanor and Park, I can't remember, but it was definitely 3 stars or less. So I decided to go into Landline with an open mind because her books that I've enjoyed more have been on the adult end of her scale. So I thought going into an adult contemporary, it was going to be a really fun time. This book was about a married couple that are starting to have issues, and when the husband and the kids go away for Christmas, she is left at home and she discovers a magical telephone that can call her past husband. I can't talk too much about why I didn't like this book without it being a massive spoiler, but I will just say that if genres are going to be merged and there's going to be some element of something that can't be explained, I feel like that has to be known from the offset, because I went into this thinking it could have been an exploration into the woman's mental health or something along those lines, and we just didn't get that, so 2 stars. Then I read Maple Sugar Crush by Beth LeBont, and I gave it 2 stars. This was one I was feeling pretty slumpy after Anna and Landline and wanted a cheesy adult romance. And I will say I did get the cheesy adult romance, so this could have been a 3 stars. But in this book, I'm not saying it's essential, but the way it was branded, I would have expected a sex scene. I really would, and we didn't get one. There was one scene that was fade to black, and apart from that, it was just the ins and outs of daily life and a bit of flirting. There wasn't actually a heavy romance element, if that makes sense, and I just kind of wanted that, so 2 stars. Then I had my best book of the month. I reread The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I buddy read this with Emily. It's her first time reading it, and I am so glad I read this again. 5 stars, even better than my first read, because the first time I did listen to the audio, and this was my first time reading it physically, and I enjoyed it even more. I absolutely love this book, and I actually recommended it to somebody at work who then went out, got the book, and has already finished it and loved it. So it's just such an amazing time, and I'm really glad that I read Daisy Jones and the Six before jumping into this one, because I can now appreciate that however much I liked Daisy Jones, this one is a clear winner, and I really need to read Malibu Rising sometime soon. But yeah, this is just one of my favourite books ever. I forgot about some of the massive plot lines, like let's just say the sad elements without spoiling anything. So when they happened, I was outright just shocked and upset, and I loved it so much. Next, I read a pretty popular book in the book community, and that is Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi. I read this, I was on a tandem read along for it. I was really excited, and sadly, I gave it 2 stars. I did not feel intelligent enough to understand this story. So this is about a mother and daughter, Tara and Antara. I do remember that because I remember the names being so similar. And it's just all about their relationship and their past experiences and the upbringing of the daughter and all stuff like that. And I thought that the massive twist at the end was going to be something. And I think it happened, but I actually couldn't tell you whether it did or it didn't. So much of this book, I was so confused, and I was just kind of reading the set pages for the read along, but wasn't paying too much attention because I was confused. And as soon as I'm not sure on something, I do get a little bit bored, and I just kind of wanted it to be over. Seeing as it's only about a 200-page book, I got through this very slowly and wasn't enjoying it. But I read it. I am so grateful to Tandem for being on the read along for it. I'm always so grateful when I get a place on those, and I hope they will take me on again in the future, but I had to rate one of the books 2 stars. Next, I read something really interesting, and that is Quality Land by Mark Huey Kling. Still don't know how you pronounce that, I'm ever so sorry. This is a book, it's translated from German, and it's about a society where the country is actually renamed Quality Land. I thought it was more of like an entity, but it is the place, the country, and it's kind of got a very big Black Mirror-esque feel to it. So everyone in the society is ranked. Shopping items turn up at your door, you don't have to order them, they just know what you want. And relationships, you get matched to somebody, you get told if there's a better match available, and I absolutely loved the build-up of this society. That is what would have nearly got this book 5 stars. But sadly, I just didn't care for the actual storyline. So we're following, I've forgotten his name, Peter? I want to say Peter. It is. So we're following Peter, who gets an item delivered to his house, and it is a vibrator. He does not need a vibrator, he doesn't want a vibrator, but he tries to return it, and Quality Land are telling him that he does want it. So doing this just makes him discover more about the country, how it works, how it's run, and I did find the society so interesting, and that's why I got the 4 stars, but I didn't care about the actual story. Next, we have another book that just made me feel unintelligent, and that is Mrs. Death by Selena Godden. And I had a few issues with this book. The first one is that there is a point in this book, it sounds so silly, I'm aware that we're adults, but I guess the correct way to say it is the use of profanity was just too much. So it's written in prose, and that the author reads out herself, but there is a specific section where we get, I'm not going to swear outright on my channel in the wrap up, but we get the F word multiple times, and then the C word multiple times. And I cringe in any book where that word is used. I don't like it. I feel like that's quite a common thing. People either say it casually or they really don't like it. And I really don't like it. So when I read it in a book once, I sort of go, oh, but it doesn't impact me because, you know, it's just a one-off in most cases. But I would say it was said at least 10 times in, like it repeated. And it turned me off the book straight away. I just didn't like it, especially in audio form. I feel like maybe written down, I could have gone past it. But as the author is reading her book, she's quite emotional about it. She's really putting the effort into the verse, kind of how she wants to say it. So it is said quite aggressively as well, and I just really didn't like that. But the other reason I didn't like this is, again, I didn't feel intelligent enough. I don't know what happened. I don't really know the story. There is Mrs. Death and there is Wolf, who is telling her story, I think, and that's all I can tell you. So I believe Kayla from Books and Lala really loved it. It is weird. It is something that I feel like if you like weird books, you probably would want to give it a go, but I do like weird, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. Next, I carried on with getting through some of my Jacqueline Wilson books, and I read Bad Girls, but I had to give this one 2 stars. Sadly, I really didn't like this. I remember it being one of my favourites as a child, and I think I know why, because I don't think I read it at the right age, and I'm not sure what age I would recommend for this. So this is about 2 girls. One of them is a bit of a goody two-shoes, and the other one is she has been fostered by the neighbour of the younger girl, and the younger girl wants to be taken under the wing of the older one and sort of like taught how to do less good things. The story was okay. I get the idea. I get why I enjoyed it. But in this book, I think the main character is supposed to be 8 years old as well, 8 or 9. And it says the words sex, penises, and suicide. And I would hate, my goddaughter is 9, and the idea of giving her this book to read, or is she a little bit older? Is she 10? The character, I mean. Giving her this book to read would make me cringe. I had to just unhaul it and keep it away from her. She wanted it and I couldn't. And I think one day maybe I'll have a chat with her mom and see whether she should read it or not. But I just feel like it was brought up in a way that is just, it doesn't need to happen. These parts of the story they weren't essential. And yeah, it just really confused me about what age this was being targeted at. So I didn't want to take responsibility of recommending that to an audience. So 2 stars. Next, I listened to another audiobook, and that was Ghosts by Dolly Alderton, which I gave 4 stars. I did really enjoy this book. It gave me Normal People vibes by Sally Rooney, but just a little bit less depressing. So this is about a woman, again, whose name has escaped me because if you're new here, I don't remember character names. And it's just her living her normal life, going out on dates, using dating apps, being ghosted. I mean, it's called Ghosts. And it's just living normal life. And that's what I really enjoy in contemporaries quite a lot of the time, is normal people doing normal things. Saying that is also what Rachel from Rachel Carris likes in contemporary, normal people doing normal things. And she did not like this book as much. So don't know what it is there, but 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Then an unexpected almost favourite of the month was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I gave 4 stars. And I've been putting this book off for so long, and I had a really ratty old copy of it, but I found the audiobook and actually followed along with the book with the audiobook, and I enjoyed it so much. I don't know what I was expecting, but it felt much more like a modern dystopian than I was putting a very, not classic hit on it. I know it's not that much of an older title, but just a bit of a classic twinge on it, I guess. And I was expecting to not really understand the language or not really like the subject of it. But it was so good. I really enjoyed it. I've heard a lot of people say they wish the sequel never existed, so I'm not going to read that, but I am going to be on the lookout for a decent copy of it to keep on my shelves. I think I would really like to revisit it. Next, I read All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and I had very high hopes for this, with Verity being my favourite book of the year so far, but sadly I only gave this book 3.5 stars, which is still a really good rating, but I was not too impressed by this book. Again, I guess I should have enjoyed it on what I said. It was normal people doing normal things, but with a Colleen Hoover, I was expecting a little more spice, a little bit more hard-hitting stuff going on, but it was normal people doing normal things. It's actually about a married couple who are really struggling with the fact that the wife in the marriage has fertility issues and they are struggling to get pregnant. And I did enjoy the premise. As I said, 3.5 stars is good. I enjoyed the premise, I enjoyed the story, but it was just missing something. I just felt like it needed an extra oomph. I have so many books to go, so I'm gonna have to speed up. But the next book I read was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I can't talk about this too much, but I will link our live show discussion down in the description, where me, Rachel and Rhiannon, we organised a read-along for A Little Life this month, read it with a group of you lovely people over on Discord, and then had a live show discussion which lasted hours a couple weeks back. So yeah, I gave this book 2 stars. For me, it didn't make me emotional. There was 2 points where I teared up, and they were both completely not the things other people cry at, I swear. It was just the more like everyday mundane life kind of thing. But this follows Jude, who has had an awful, awful childhood into early adulthood. It has been disgusting. And my main issue with this book, again, as I said, I can't go too much into it though. We did a whole live show with so many opinions, but I got from this book, I was a little desensitized when we found out every new part of Jude's life, because it was just trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And I feel like for me to have been emotionally affected, this needed to be a non-fiction, a memoir. Not that I ever want any of these things to happen to people, but knowing it was a fiction, I was very desensitized from the story and could easily brush it off. Whereas I feel like if it had a non-fiction like punch to it, that it would have absolutely destroyed me. I also wasn't a massive fan of Hanya Yanagihara's writing, so it took me a very long time to get into it. It took me a long time to get motivated to read it. So yeah, I wouldn't be picking up another book by that author, but I'm so glad I can finally tick that book off my TBR. Next, I read The Deal by Al Kennedy, which I gave 4.5 stars, and I have no shame in it. This is a new adult romance. It is about some kids at college, and to be honest, I don't remember that much. There is a hockey spin on it, I know that, and there's an exam that only this one girl does that well in, and the hockey player wants her help so that he can stay playing hockey on his scholarship or whatever. And it was just a really nice time, and I have got the first book of the next series. I want to say it's The Chase. So I definitely want to stay in Al Kennedy's little romance world, and I'm so glad I discovered this little world. Next, I read Rabbits by Terry Miles, which I gave 3 stars. This is another one I was so grateful to get my hands on. I was on the Black Crow PR tour for this book. So I don't have a blog, but I did it over on Instagram, and I had a great time reading this book. Thank you again to Claire from Books and Ink for making sure I had a book ready for the read along. I really do appreciate it. But this is one where it was about 400 pages. The first 200 pages for me could have been a 5-star. If you love Glitch in the Matrix stories, The Mandala Effect, Black Mirror, if you love all that kind of thing, you will love the start of this book, I promise you. But then for me, I got a little bit lost towards the end. So as I said, 3 stars is always a good rating, but it was a 5 and tailed down. But it started off with so much promise. Next, I read my first poetry collection of the month, and that was Overshare by Charlotte Al Frears, also known as Shah from Thoroughly Enjoyed Books. So this is one of the books I didn't give a rating this month. I don't know how to rate poetry, is my one reasoning there. I could not tell you the literary merit of these poems because I just don't know. But this is a poetry zine, I think she said it is, that Shah published, and she donated any of the profits to Calm, the men's mental health charity, and I was just so happy to get my hands on this, support Shah and support the charity as well. But yeah, I don't really understand poetry. I've read it, I've appreciated the gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations in here, but I can't say more than that on it. So I'm sorry, Shah, for not having a fully formed opinion, but thank you for providing me with this and providing the world with this. Next, I had my buddy read with Connor over at Connor's Library Corner, and we read This Lie Will Kill You by Chelsea Pitcher, which I rated 2.5 stars. Sadly, I didn't love this book. I thought going in it was going to be quite a good idea. It starts off as a Clue kind of party, and it's going to be a murder mystery, but there's a much more sinister twist to this. My main problem, again, I realise how long I've been talking, so I will cut it short, But my main problem here is that it is told as the party and then flashbacks to what happened before. But sadly, that does mean that when the characters are in potentially dangerous situations at the party, or they're making out of character decisions, the characters and the suspense isn't really formed, so you don't care. So even towards the end of the book, one of the characters makes a massive decision and it's supposed to be a huge character shift, but I just felt like the characters weren't developed enough for me to actually think it was a shift and be shocked. Does that make sense? Next, I read another poetry collection called The Smallest of Bones, I believe. I'll make sure it's on the screen. And this is another one that I just couldn't give a rating. If I was to give this one a rating, it would be pretty low. I got no enjoyment out of this. I was very confused. But they did have scientific explanations of different bones within the chunks of poetry, which I found like such a good addition. I thought that was a great idea. But yeah, I got nothing out of this. I read it because it was on NetGalley. I was trying to get into more poetry. I requested it a while ago, had to tick it off NetGalley, and I can't really tell you anything about it. Next, the last one I actually have in front of me is Last Breath by Rachel Kane, which is the 11th book of the Morganville Vampire series. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I have found that on reread of the Morganville series, I'm giving much more of them 4 stars than 5 stars, but I think that's because I've grown as an adult and can see more of the literary merit in something rather than just the teenage enjoyment of these characters. But something massive happens in this book and I completely forgot about it and I was floored. So obviously I can't tell you much with this being book number 11, but if you haven't heard me talk about this series before, the Morganville Vampire series follows Claire, who is very, very intelligent, and she is accepted into a college even though she's only 16. Her parents don't want her to go far away, so they send her to Texas Prairie University, which is located in Morganville. But Morganville is run by vampires, and as soon as you enter into the town, you can't leave. Except from the college kids, because they don't find out about the vampires. Anyway, I know what I meant. And yeah, Claire ends up living with Michael, Eve and Shane, who are all a little bit older, and they've all got their own like great bonds with Claire, and I absolutely love these characters. I love this world and I can't wait to carry on and finish my reread of the series. Next, I started a vlog idea that will be coming to you very, very soon, and I reread His Banana by Penelope Bloom, and I gave it 2.5 stars. So originally I rated this 3 stars, but on reread I did have to knock it down because it wasn't as funny the second time. So this is about our main character, Natasha, who works as a journalist in a business magazine, and she is asked to infiltrate Galleon Enterprises where Bruce works. She's told to do this to dig up the dirt on Bruce and what they're doing in the company, but she ends up eating Bruce's banana, and that's all I will say. So please do check out my vlog that's upcoming if you'd like more of the content of that book. Then I finished the audiobook for Margo and Me by Juno Dawson, which I gave 3.5 stars. So this one, I don't want to say it, but it was fine. It was about, the main character's name has gone from my head, but a character and her grandmother, Margo. So this character has to move to, with her mom, to live with Margo in Wales because her mom has been sick. She has had cancer. They're going to live with Margo as more of a support system. So this is an English girl who goes to a Welsh school, and there's quite a lot at the start of her being called out for being English and posh, which I found absolutely hilarious. But that bit was really funny. A lot of the book was told very juvenile. It is a YA, but it was much more towards the middle grade end of the spectrum. And then as it carried forward, it's like we got more to the higher YA section. So that was one thing that brought my rating down a little bit, is I wasn't quite sure where it was supposed to be. So I was going to give this book 3 stars, but the ending made me sob. I was listening to the audiobook walking back from town and crying in public. So 3.5 stars. It is, we get more of the grandma's character because we have diary entries from when she was evacuated to this farm in Wales in the Second World War. So I liked the letter style of it. I liked the intrigue of being able to read the next letter. But yeah, it wasn't the best book I've read, but it takes another Juno Dawson off my TBR. Then I read Her Cherry by Penelope Bloom, which I gave 2.5 stars. So I can't remember the character names of this one, but this, I know it is with William, who is the brother of Bruce from the first book, and it is all about him buying a baker's cherry pie, and it just so happens that this baker is also a virgin, so he takes her literal cherry too. And that's all I'll say. 2.5 stars. It was funny. Then I read His Treat, which I gave 2 stars, and this time I cannot tell you anything about the plot because I've forgotten it. But it wasn't as funny or memorable, and the plot wasn't as great, and there weren't any innuendos, so 2 stars for that one, not 2.5. Then I read His Package, which I gave 2.5 stars because it was so much more funny. This is about 2 characters who live in an apartment building and they have each other's mail accidentally in their mailboxes, and the male character ends up with the female character's dildo, and that is all I will say. It was a good time. Finally, I read her secret. No, wait, have I got all my stats wrong? I've got all my stats wrong. Okay, so next I read The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, which I gave 1 star. I hated it. I thought it was awful. I listened to the audiobook of this and I still don't really know what the point was. This is supposed to be a kind of thriller horror with an end of the world twist, and I don't get it. I'm sorry. But next, here we go. This is why I'm very upset about my stats. I then read Her Secret by Penelope Bloom, which I gave 2 stars, which is a hate to lovers kind of romance in this series. And it centres around the fact that the female character hides the secret that she has a daughter. And finally, book number 26 of this month, not 25, which would change my rating and my pages and everything, which I'm so mad at myself, but we're just going to leave it for now, was Her Bush by Penelope Bloom, which I gave 2.5 stars. And this is about a girl who starts working for a landscape company. She goes to this millionaire's garden and she sculpts one of his bushes into a penis and balls. And an art collector comes along and says that it is the next thing in modern art. And it was hilarious. 2.5 stars. It wasn't a good story, but it was very funny. So those are all the books I read in June. This video has taken me a very long time to film. I'm filming on my lunch break and is it weird that I want to go back to work? This is how long I've been talking. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any opinions on any of these books, then please do let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you about them. But on that note, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.